All right. Hello, hello, hello. We are at part three of our film series here on photo retouching. It's a lot of different things, and I just want to break it up so the video is not just way super long. What we're going to talk about now is in photo retouching is thing called digital plastic surgery. It's where you're doing one of a couple of things. You're either trying to warp or twist, a body part for enhancing it. And I'm going to show you the subtle way that's supposed to be done, how it actually supposed to be used versus being very exaggerative and, making things look weird, caricature kind of style, cartoony looking and bad. The other thing is taking multiple pictures of the same person or the same thing and merging them together using layer masking and some effect, being effective with layer masking, warping, twisting, whatever you need to do to try to get the two pictures to look like they were that one shot. So that's what we're going to go through here right now. So the first thing is going to be the digital plastic surgery part, which is going to fall into files that you will have under body changes. So in that photo retouch folder that you are going to get, if you don't have it, I thought I had it. I thought I had it there, but I'm not sure if I posted it, so I got to upload it. But body changes. Inside of body changes, there's a bunch of different files here. Some things we've already kind of covered. Like there's one called hair remove, which is just using your selection tools and then using the selected mask to be able to select that hair. But there's a PDF in there as well that goes with that file that just walks you through a procedure that you used to have to do using layer masking channels and that sort of thing. So if you want to explore that, feel free to do so. The first thing we're going to talk about is this before photo. No, we're not going to talk about that first. We're going to do the stomach plastic surgery, that one. Okay, I had to remember, I had to make sure I'm on the right path of things. So we're going to start with that one. This one is going to be using the liquefy tool in a sensible way, and then we're going to go to this other file here called liquefy, which uses the same liquefy filter in a sensible way to try to reduce or fix or adjust someone's body. So here's the scenario that we're going to run through here. When you open this picture up, this is these little dots and lines and arrows are just kind of pointing to where there's supposed to be a quote unquote problem with this person. And I say it in quotes because, quite honestly, nobody really has a body shape problem. It's just the person who's viewing it that has that problem. If you ever do photography for models and working in the fashion industry and things like that, you are going to get some very shallow people sometimes who think that something like this little small slight bulge right here on the sides, what people will call love handles, that it's unnatural and it shouldn't be there. That the person should be straight up and down and all that. And I'm not trying to stand on my soapbox or whatever, but you will run into situations where you will try to fight and be like, "Hey, that's fine. That's just the way the person is shaped. There's nothing wrong with them." And the client is going to say that yeah, there's a problem. We got to get rid of this bulge because it's making our underwear, which we're probably trying to sell, look bad, or that person looks fat and we need to get rid of it. So you're going to run into a lot of this craziness. So, solution is using this thing called a liquefy filter to fix that, and to work with that. The problem with the liquefy filter, just like any of the other warping filters, let me show you this. If I go to edit and I go down here to transform, oh, I can't do it because this is the background layer. Let me duplicate this layer real quick. I couldn't get to the transform options because this is the background layer, and you can't do any transformations all directly onto the background layer. Let me go now to edit, go down here to transform. So under the transform section, there's your standard scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective. But then there's this thing here called warp. All right. Now, what warp it does, it allows you through this grid. Hopefully, you can see these lines. There's these grid lines that are showing up here that allow me to bend and warp and twist this picture. So the way it works is that I can grab each quadrant, which is, right between the lines, or I can grab the lines themselves and I can kind of bend and warp this around. You'll get little resize handles for those of y'all familiar with Illustrator. You'll have these little resize, these little handles that'll pop out that let you bend and twist at each one of the corner points, on the sides, on the corners, and kind of bend and twist this and warp this around. Now, if you work in a subtle manner, you can make something that looks good. But I'm on purpose warping this around kind of goofily because some people will do this and think that, oh, okay, well, let me give this person, a thinner waist, and that will, fix the problem. And if I do this right in enough times, enough places, either careful or obvious, I can warp this image, get it the way I kind of want, and yeah, that's going to be the ideal picture. You know, and comparing to the original, yeah, the waist looks thinner, but now it's very distorted and unnatural. So you had that's been around. That warp feature was there. If you're careful with it and do it correctly, you can actually do a pretty good deal. But they invented this liquefy filter, and I'm just creating a layer for it, making a duplicate layer for it. Now with the liquefy filter, you have a lot more control, bigger interface, more things there, but you have a greater control over what you're going to warp and how you're going to warp it. So this way, everything is not going to go crazy, because what you used to have to do in the past is, like, if I wanted to just warp this area of the body without affecting anything else, I would have to select that section, jump into a whole nother layer, and then do that warping that I just showed you and try to only warp that little piece. That became a lot. Other thing that you had to do in preparation, which you kind of still should do, the background, the background behind this white background behind the subject here, you should separate the two. So you should get rid of this extra white background behind here if you can, because then that will be distorted as well with the liquefy or with the warp. It'll be distorted at the same time. So what some people will tend to do is they'll go in here, they'll go to select, and like maybe say select and subject, so they can try to do this quickly. It'll try to select the subject, which should be the body without the background. So you should see the marching ants going around the entire outside of the body and not touch any of the background. But if it happens to, if you can see, like right here, there's a little bit of a problem, didn't get picked up, well, then they can switch over to the quick selection tool and try to quickly select there, and then across the top here, didn't quite get selected, and maybe, down at the bottom, just go through and try to quickly select everything. And then they can either go through that selected mask or find out even more, or if they're happy with this, they can just go and make a layer mask down here at the bottom of the with the little square with the circle cut out to apply a layer mask. So that way this happens. I get a layer mask going on where I don't see the background. It's been masked away or hidden, so I don't see it. Now, that does work. I can apply the liquefy filter right now. I can go to that image, that edit and warp, edit, transform, and warp, and do that right now. One extra step, though, that kind of adds on to this to make this a little more secure and a lot better in the application. Right-clicking onto this layer, I can convert this into a smart object. Now, why am I doing that? If I turn it into a smart object, what happens is that the masking, it looks like the mask went away and just applied directly to the picture. And I got the little icon down there in the corner. What's actually happened, if I double click on this thumbnail, what ends up happening is that another file gets opened up. It's a PSB file. PSB file was Photoshop big. It was for large format. So if I needed to make a billboard, actual size billboard, huge file, like super huge file. You could save the file as a PSB file, because a PSD file would possibly break, where it won't save all the information, won't save it properly, and then you'll lose data. Whereas the PSB file was a bigger file format for bigger file formats, and you could save that way. And that's how the PSB file was created. But when these smart objects were being made, they use the PSB file as the carrier or the container file that's hidden inside of your smart object. So anything that you apply to your picture before you converted that layer into a smart object, it's inside of that smart object. So when you double click onto that thumbnail of that smart object, you would get this PSB file that has the layer mask and has the original file and everything still in place in there. This gives you the opportunity, if you needed to modify that mask, you can go in and modify the mask, create the changes, save the file, and it would update the regular Photoshop file. It's kind of a cool thing. So that's a long drawn out just explanation of things. But having this as a protected layer, now for the liquify filter, when you apply it, it applies as a smart filter. So that way you can go back and edit and rechange whatever you do inside of that liquify even further and go back and change it later. You can't do anything like like you can do the edit and the transform because that will be available, and you can do the warp transform if you want to because it's still available. You'll still get the grid and everything else, and it will still work just like it normally does. But now it's applied to just the image and not the background that's behind it because there is no more background behind there. Let me cancel that because I don't want to do that. I want to do the liquify. And without the background there, now you're warping whatever you do can be applied to anything that has a new background, and you won't see the old background there being warped and distorted. There's this thing that used to be called Photoshop Fails. I don't know if it's still that same name, but it used to be a website or a couple of websites you can go to look at people doing things with the liquify or the warp to try to make them look better. You know, give them muscles, give them a larger chest, give them a smaller waist or a bigger butt or something like that. And they end up distorting and warping the bathroom, the rest of the bathroom that's behind them, because of course they're taking the picture in front of the large bathroom mirror, and they're warping the tub or the paper towel rolls being warped around and stuff like that. It's weird and it's funny looking, but it's goofy things like that that'll happen. Now let's get into the liquify. So once I get this setup done, take whatever layer that you're going to apply the liquify filter to, apply the mask if you need to it, but make sure that you convert it to a smart object. Once you do that, you go to filter and you'll see liquify as an option up there. When you choose the liquify filter, you're going to get a different interface that's going to pop up, open. This interface has its own toolbar that's over there on the left-hand side, has some settings that are there on the right, and you're going to be coming in here and working on liquefying this image. Now, if you were doing it on a subtle level, meaning you're not trying to do anything drastic and crazy to the whole entire picture, you just want to isolate this one area on the sides or anything like that, the first thing you should do is freeze the image. Now, freezing it means that everything is going to be uneditable. You won't be able to change it or make any adjustments to it. But then you can thaw different areas that you want to be able to change, and only that area that's thawed is what's going to be affected. Everything else is going to be intact and not changed. So to do that, you're going to come over here on the right-hand side, and yeah, where it says mask options, you're going to open that up if you need to, and you should be able to hit this mask all button. Now, there is kind of a bug within the system that I noticed that depending on what day that I open up Photoshop, when I hit this mask all button, nothing happens. What should happen is this. You see this big mask, whatever color it is that goes over everything. If you hit this mask all button and nothing happens, go a little further down to where it says show mask. Under the video, under the view options, if you got to open it up, open it up. Under the view options, you'll see show mask. It may not be checked on. You hit the check mark and check it on, should show up. You can also change the color. The original mask color was red. I changed it to cyan just to see a difference. You can change it to whatever color works best for your vision, because your eyes are your eyes. If the cyan works, then cool, use that. But whatever works for the image, you could change the mask color if you need to. So show mask, make sure that's checked on. So if you hit the mask all button and the mask doesn't show up and you hit the button repeatedly, then just come here and make sure that show mask is checked on. If it is, pick the color, the mask should show back up. If it doesn't, then the next thing you're going to do is, since you froze everything, you have to thaw the areas that you want to affect. So now over here onto the left, you got all these different tools in the toolbox over here. towards the bottom. So from the bottom, one, two, three, four buttons up, you have a thaw mask tool. And above that, you have a freeze tool. What these are basically just paintbrushes that you're going to paint with. So with the thaw, since I froze everything, I'll be able to paint and take away that mask from that area. So this area is now unfrozen. When you click on one of those two buttons, the thaw or the freeze, again, going back, if you hit mask all and nothing happens, you know that the show mask is checked on, but still nothing happens. When you come over here and hit the mask or freeze button, it should turn the mask on. So it should show you everything frozen. It'll just all of a sudden pop up. Again, nothing you've done is just for some reason that version of Photoshop on that day or that minute had a little glitch to it. So that's the way to fix it. Check, make sure show the mask is on, and then click on one of the buttons and it'll pop in. That's what I've noticed. Now, you're thawing out only the area that you want to affect. So that means like the top of the underwear here, because it's kind of bending downward because of the little bulge right there. And then this little side that I want to kind of push in to the right a little bit. Now, if you do too much, that's what the freeze is for you to kind of, okay, I did too much up here, down there. I can, go back and refreeze it. That's all that's for. It's just that simple little back and forth exchange. There is no feathering or anything like that. It's just that brush. If you want to change the size of the brush, square bracket keys on the keyboard will do the job. All right. Now, once you've done that and you got everything kind of thawed or frozen how you need to, I'm just going to do this side as well. So that way I can deal with that. Everything that's thawed out is going to be affected. So without that background behind there, I shouldn't see that be distorted with anything. Now I'm going to go to the other tools. Now, the one main tool that you're going to use the most is the top one up here, the one at the top. This is your warping tool, your forward warping tool, I think is what they call it. It allows you with a click and drag to warp anything in the direction that you're dragging. So as I click and hold and drag to the left, the right, the up or down, it's going to push and pull those pixels that fall inside of that circle around as you're doing it. So again, to be subtle, not to be obvious, before you start using the tool, you want to go over here and you're going to set the options. So over on the right-hand side, you have some options on size. Again, you can use this slider here to change the size, or you can use the square bracket keys. You will have a density and you will have a pressure. Now, these two work hand in hand with each other. Density, think about it like the center of the circle. I'm trying to move the circle where you can see it. All right, so think of the center of this circle, whatever size it is. The density is how that from the center of the circle out, how much of an effect you're going to have to your object or to those pixels. So a low number, like in the 20s, like I got here, means the very outside of the circle is not as strong of an influence as the center of the circle. Okay. If you go with a higher number, now that influence starts to spread out more and more. To I think if you go over, I forgot what number the highest number is. Let's see. Yeah, the highest number is 100. So if you go over 50, then you're starting to go outside of the circle and being able to affect a bigger and larger area all at one time. So I usually keep the density down within the 20 range. So that way, again, to be subtle, I'm not affecting an area as much if I start from the outside of the circle and push in than if I started in the center of the circle with the pixels and kind of pushed or pulled out. It's just a matter of you doing that. Now, the pressure is the speed at which that happens. Well, I won't say the speed. The pressure is, the amount, the strength of that distortion. So the density is the area that can be affected all at one time, and then the pressure is the strength. How much movement are you going to get with your movement of your mouse? Again, higher numbers, things move faster than if you go with lower numbers. So you want to keep it in low numbers to keep the subtlety going, so that way you can have control over what you're doing. So you set those options up as you need to, and then I would usually go for a project like this. I would go for a brush that has a pretty decent size to it. Doesn't have to be super huge, but you don't want anything that's small. Probably around this size, which what this is, around 300, 200, 300, somewhere right there that you can control. Because I want to be able to fix this at one time with a click and drag. and not have to do a bunch of click and drags over a multitude of areas with a smaller size brush. Or if the brush is too big, I don't want to move stuff too fast with too big of a brush either. Now, do you start at the center of the brush with your information, or do you want to start manipulating the information from the edge of the circle? That's up to you because again, with this density and pressure that I have, starting from outside of the brush circle, you have less of an influence until you start getting to the center, and then it moves more, pushes more. So I usually trying to be subtle, start on the outside, click and hold, and I start dragging towards the left, dealing with this right side. And I start to go slow at first because I want to see that from the edge of the brush, not much influence. It's moving, but not a lot. And then when I get to the center, it's going to move a lot more. And that way I can kind of adjust as I work with the brush. I can kind of work with adjusting the shape of these pixels. Now, again, you want I'm trying to go for subtlety here. I don't want to do some big, huge push in that exaggerates this and makes this look very much wrong. I mean, I could, and it could look like this, and the client will probably be, yeah, yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly how I imagine that person to look. It's like, really, really, that's really what you thought of how they look, right? Now, let's say you mess up. I went this far and I was way too far. Can I go the other way? Yeah, you can to an extent. You can push and pull in every direction. That's the purpose of this. So that way, if you go too far, you can kind of come back, and that can help to fix it out. But there is a thing called reconstruction that's available. Um, Over in the options over here on the right, there is a restore all, and then there's a reconstruct button down here in this bottom section for the brush reconstruction options. The reconstruct options that show up there is like how much reconstruction are you doing, at one time, how much you're reverting it back. So if I hit restore all, it all comes back to how it was. So there's that tool, but there's also another one. And let me push this around a little bit more again. Let me go to some extremes here. Now, over in your toolbox, the second button down from the top is a reconstruct brush. The reconstruct brush added to the density and the pressure that you have. And again, with this one, you probably want to go opposite. You want to reconstruct and bring everything back as quickly as possible to start back over. So you'll increase the density and the pressure, but you also have a rate with this brush. With this particular brush, the rate is the speed. How fast does it reconstruct and bring things back? So this way you can kind of, adjust that if you want to as well. But what this tool will do is as you click and drag over top of your affected area, you can have it restore things back without having to restore everything. So let's say I did an adjustment here on this right side, but I also did one on the left side too. The restore all button would remove the adjustment on both sides. Whereas if I use this reconstruct tool, this brush, I can only affect just one side without affecting anything else. So that's what that happens to be for. So forward warp tool to warp and twist and bend your material. So that way the pixels can be adjusted how they need to be. And again, the center of the brush is going to have more influence than the outside edge of the brush. So you use that to your advantage to kind of warp and twist as you feel you need to. The more practice you get at it, the easier this is going to become. And you'll start to realize, what size of the brush that you can work with reasonably and get it done. Now, that will take care of the forward warp tool. The reconstruct tool, if you, again, work with smaller numbers on the pressure or smaller or larger numbers on the density, you'll have more or less of an influence to bring some of the information back. So that way it kind of restores and smooths out maybe some of the rough edges that you have. Now you also have the third button down, which is a smooth tool. What that does is when you have those rough, bumpy areas that you've kind of been working on. This tool kind of does both. It does the restoration and the forward warping at the same time. So that way, any little wavy areas that's not supposed to be wavy, the more times you click and drag over it, it's going to smooth it out. That's usually the last thing that I would do when I'm trying to, do this little kind of fix is, run through that process there with the smooth tool. Again, you have a rate and a density and a pressure that you can work with there to kind of not bring it back so fast so quickly. But yeah, you got the ability to kind of take away the love handles of this particular person, based on what your client wanted you to do. Now, when you're finished, I was trying to think if there was anything else I need to show you, and there isn't. So once you're finished, you would come over here to the properties, over here on the right hand side. That show mask, you can uncheck that to make the mask completely go away. That's the kind of the easiest way to make it all go away. You can also, up there, right further up, you do have none right there in the mask options that you can choose. It kind of does the same thing. It turns the mask off without you having to uncheck it. But that will take care of it. Basically unfreezes everything. So now you can bend, warp, and twist and do whatever you want with all the rest of this. So that's how that works. Now, the rest of these tools here are weird. And I say they're weird because besides doing just a distortion of your image, I haven't really seen a good use of any of these in a normal sense. For instance, this first one here is a twirl tool. The way it works, based on the density, the rate, and the pressure, which I'm going to turn them all up so you can see this be done faster. You can twirl your pixels. So on the belly button here, if I press and hold on the belly button with these high numbers of the density, the pressure, and the rate, you see what it's doing. It's kind of spinning around those pixels, giving kind of a swirly kind of thing going on. Again, why would I do that in a practical sense? I don't know. But you also have your alter option button that you can press and hold down, and it'll make everything swirl in the other direction. So either I want to, bring it back, or I just want to, spin it the other way. And again, why do you want to do this? I don't know. It's there. It's a tool, and because it's here with all the rest of them, I want to make sure I show them to you, so you know that these things are available if you want to. But that's what the restoration tool is for. I can just restore it back and move to the next thing. Now, the next one is actually two tools that you would use in conjunction. These got a little bit of a practical sense to them. One is called the pucker tool, the first one here. And it, again, with your rates, your density, and the pressure, you can push things in and basically pucker them in to make them smaller. So again, someone with larger eyes or big ears, you can kind of, make them, the ears get a little smaller or something like that. If you had a car, I've done this with a vehicle before. Um, Person had the wheels were too small and they wanted bigger wheels. And so we use the bloat tool, which is the next one down from the pucker. The bloat actually would inflate or blow up, your object. And so I could make the tires look a little bit bigger by just making just by choosing the tire, right, and blowing the tire up instead of transforming it, just blew it up that way. It was an exaggeration that we were doing on the car anyway, so it worked. Another practical thing, someone's eyes are uneven in size, and sometimes someone may have eyes that look like they're closed. So you can what you used to be able to do, and I say used to because there's other filters that probably will do this better. You could go and use the pucker or the bloat to open the eyes or close the eyes a little bit, but you really had to be careful because if you go too high with density and rate and pressure, it would boom, big bug eyes all of a sudden. So you have to make sure that you're adjusting properly, trying to be subtle versus trying to make a caricature. But that's what that's for. Then these other ones here, you got this one called Shift Left Pixel Tool. And the way it works is that if I click and drag If I go up, it pushes things down. If I push left, it goes right. If I go right, it goes left. It basically is just shifting the pixels around kind of randomly based on how I click and drag, what direction I go, up, down, left, or right, or what have you. And it just is a distortion tool. You could probably use this like if you want to distort somebody's face, like character witnesses in a trial, they kind of distort their faces and stuff. There's a pixelate filter that's under distort that will do the whole pixelating where you get all the squares, when they try to like censor out all the dirty bits, or censor a person's face or any of the violence that happens and stuff like that in videos. That's pixelation filter. You could do that. That works. But you also have this distortion filter here that can work on top of that or along with that to distort it even more, if you want to do that. And again, why? Don't know. It's just something that's there. All right, but essentially, you do all these things, whatever you want, subtle or real obvious, goofy distortions, and then you hit OK. Because you have this as a protected layer, the liquify filter applies as a smart filter. It is not permanently applied, so you can always turn it on and turn it off, and you can always go back to the liquify filter with a double click, change it to whatever you need to change it to. Even if I need to restore everything back to the way it was, I can do so and start all over again if I need to. That's what makes this, kind of magic to be able to work that process. All righty, done with this part. At least done with this picture. Now let's go to a different file. That's this liquify JPEG file here. I'm going to show you something with this person. Because again, this is a standard thing that happens. This nice, pretty woman here, she's showing off this bra and panties package, and everything looks great. And the client's like, "Well, she looks fat." I was like, "Well, she's not. She's whatever size that she is." But just for guys who don't know this, plus size women start at like a size 9 or 10, and I know that because I dated a young lady who was a plus size model. And she was a size, I forget what size she was, but I'm not going to get into that. But like, you'd be surprised what is considered plus size people when it comes to the fashion industry. It's wild and crazy, and it changes and fluctuates. Women's clothing is weird in comparison to men's clothing. Rant over. So what they want to do is the same thing I did before. The her sides, they want them to be a little smaller. It's like, can't you cinch her waist in? I was like, no, not practically, because that's like how she's built, and that's what she has on. That's how it's going to show. But they want that to be fixed, and then they like, well, can you get rid of that turkey wobble under her arm? The what? The turkey wobble under her arm. You see, our arm is not straight. It's like, well, if you look at anybody's arm, nobody's arm is straight underneath there when they're holding it in that position. There's going to be a sag because that's what happens with muscles. Again, they don't care. They want that changed. Um, and then they're like, well, her teeth look kind of like buck teeth. Like, look, she looked like a horse. So can we fix that and like close her mouth up or something like that? And after you have this big sigh of relief and do the whole George Costanza "Serenity Now" kind of speech, then you can start looking at doing the liquefy feature once they leave and they agree to pay you, the money to do this. You would go and do the things that we did before. Select subject, make a duplicate layer, select subject to get majority of her selected out from the background, make a layer mask out of it. So that way it's her just isolated without the background behind her. Again, to make this process easier, if there's looks like it missed a whole hand piece up there. Let me double click onto the layer mask. Yeah, see, I missed our whole hand right up there. Let's go with the paintbrush tool and paint with the brush. Paint that back in. I'm just doing that part of the hand because that was going to annoy me. And you want to make sure that the output is set to what? Layer mask. That's right. before you hit OK. So that way it's updating that layer mask. And then the next thing, right click on that masked layer and convert that to a smart object. So this way you can always go back to the layer mask and fix and change whenever you want by just simply double clicking on this thumbnail and going back in there and changing. And then when you finish, save, and it will update everything that you need to do. So if she's, find out that she's missing a leg or something like that, or you missed the arm or the hands, or want to do some more detail in the hair, you can easily do so. Once I got here, I want to go to filter and I want to go to liquify. Now, when I go to the liquify filter here, again, process. I would want to do the mask all to turn this mask on, change the mask color if I need to there under the options. And then I would use the thaw tool to thaw out this part of her arm they want to fix and see if they can flatten that out a bit. I would also zoom in because you want to make sure you want to zoom in and have a little more uh, visual confirmation of the subject there. All right, so I've thought out what I need. I need to freeze where the hair is. All right, and then I want to use the forward warp tool. I want to go over here with the forward warp and I want to play with my density and my pressure. So I want to do low numbers here. So low numbers help with the subtlety. So if I go, let's say, anywhere between 10 and 15 on the pressure, and the density is probably the same thing between 10 and 15. That should be good enough for what I want to do. I can adjust the size of the brush. So this way, again, I want to make sure that the brush is big enough to try to do all this in one hit with a click and drag. So that way I don't have to do bump, 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 do smaller hits with a smaller size brush, because that's where everything starts to get wavy and bumpy and I have to use the restore brush tool to kind of fix things. Do I start outside of the shape, outside of the pixels with the tip of the brush, or do I go right in the center of the brush and kind of move it all at one time? Again, up to you. I would probably go right from the edge of the brush and press, click and drag upward so it starts pushing everything up without it, being very drastic and very fast. Because you just want it to be a little bit, not a lot. And then when I get over here to the elbow, starting a little more inside of the circle to kind of give the elbow, to kind of give that where you still got a little bit of muscle, where it's going to have a curve, where it's going to flow and then like dip up a little bit. And again, this is just me with doing this type of project. So I've had to do this a lot with a lot of different people, different shapes, different sizes, and try to make them look like they are better. And it's not always the best, but it's something that works. All right. So I got that done, and I'm going to hit none to kind of turn off the mask because I don't really need it anymore. Now I want to talk about the face. This liquify filter, when it comes to faces, it has a face aware liquify feature. So no matter how many faces are in the picture, okay, that you're going to deal with, I only got one here, so it's only going to give me one. The face aware liquify will recognize the faces and allow you to adjust the face without having to use the forward warp tool or any of the thawing or freezing. So 1, 2, 3 buttons up from the bottom. On the left, looks like a person's head, like one of those little profile images there. It's the face aware liquify. You choose that button, that tool. You will probably see these little lines going around the side of her face. And then as you get closer, those lines will turn into an oval and elliptical shape to go around the person's face. And if you go to like their nose or their eye and hover for a second, or their mouth and hover for a second, you get little nodes and lines that would show up, giving you options to manually click and drag. Direct your eyes over to the right though. First, there is a face aware liquify section that will recognize the individual faces. So if you got more than one, at the top of this face aware liquify where it says select, you can hit the drop down to pick the different faces. And then what you have are these little sliders here that you can either link together so both sliders work at the same time with the same number, or unlink them with another click. So that way you could do different ones from the left to the right hand side for some of these options, and then be able to adjust manually your character. So again, for her mouth, they wanted her smile to not be so big, because they say her, she's got horse teeth. Stupid, but I understand. So do I adjust her smile? So in the mouth section here, I can adjust for the smile. I can make her smile more or smile less, where it almost looks like a frown. The upper and lower lip was probably what I need to do. Is with that is I can plump the upper lip up. I can plump up the lower lip. Pull it down or pull it up. I can change. Let's see about the mouth height. The mouth height is probably what I need to do because I can bring it in so she's not has so big, so long of teeth, as they call it. And I can make the mouth slightly wider and then play with the smile. Again, I'm trying to go for more of the subtle aspects of this and not the harder, rougher type of look. Now, does this work every time for every character, every person's face? No, not to any of the extremes. Sometimes, depending on how much of an area that's covering in the picture, you may not get much of an effect with any of these sliders, because it's too subtle of an effect. Because that's the purpose of this face aware liquify is for subtlety. Can you apply it again and again? Yeah, but then you would have to apply that liquify filter one more time. It wouldn't be like hitting OK to get out of this and then double click on it to get back into it like we normally do with these smart filters. It's actually applying the liquify filter all over again with the same face aware liquify again and see if you could do more with it. I don't really suggest that you would do that. Manual way. With your face aware liquify tool, you can hover over different parts of the subject's face and you'll get the ability to make adjustments. Some going towards the character range, you can do weird stuff. Um, Going towards, just trying to make this a better looking image. You could try to make adjustments. And again, I always say try because it's not like this is going to be like the magic salve that's going to fix it all, but it tends to make things look a little bit better uh depending on what you're trying to adjust and how you're trying to adjust it for. You can kind of make some pretty good things. Now there is at the bottom on the right hand side, there is this bottom section that you can check and uncheck the preview on to kind of see your before and after, to see if you've gone too far, not enough, if you need to fix or change something, so that way you not doing too much of a crazy thing to the person. And when you finish, you hit OK to get out of that, and you see what you get. Again, good, bad, up to you. The liquify filter is, something you can turn on and turn off. You can go back into it to make changes as you need to. All right, I want to take a pause real quick because I have to address a phone call that I was supposed to be on, and I will be right back. All right, folks, I am back for now, and we're going to move forward here. So I just showed you the liquefy filter and how it works, and a pretty good deal with that. That's one way of being able to adjust someone's, body structure. And again, being subtle is more important than being very super obvious. Now, I'm going to go through, I'm going to use a couple files that you are not going to have access to because the subject of this, did not give me permission to give this to anybody. So I can show it to you, and show you what I'm doing here and why, what's going on and that sort of thing. But you are not going to have access to these files. So, doo-doo-doo-doo. Let me go through here and show you Kimberly. So I want to show you what I did, and I want to show you the start of the process of getting it done. So this picture here to the left and to the right, the little small pictures, this is the two pictures we started with in the project. And what we wanted, what the issue, so to speak, was that the picture here on the left, they liked the head position, but they didn't like the body position. Picture on the right here, they liked the body position, but of course they didn't like the head. They didn't like how the eyes looked and that sort of thing. So what they wanted was essentially a combination. Take the head off of the one on the left, put it on the body on the right, and this is what was created, down the middle here. So that was what was made and created. I think it turned out to be a pretty good job doing this. And we're going to talk about what's involved in creating this here. So let me close this. And let me open our two pictures. I think it's start 1 and 2. Yep. Just making sure these are the two pictures. Let me open them both up. Okay, so these two pictures. First thing is looking at their image size. So in the image size, when I go to image and image size, they're, pretty good size pictures. They're 6x10s, which is fine for what we need to do. 300 pixel per inch, which is great. So we got a lot of information of pixels that we can push and pull around. And that part is important because I want to be able to, um, they're both matching in size, and I want to make sure that I'm using that information. So we're going to start off like this. I want to do Control A or Command A to do a select all, and then I'm going to do a copy, which is just Control or Command C. What that's going to allow me to do is this. When I go to File to New, in the recent section, it's going to show me, all the recent files that I've blank documents that I worked on, that I started working on here in my Photoshop. And one of them is going to be called clipboard. This clipboard entry is what I just copied. So basically, I copied the width, the height, the resolution, the color mode, the color bit depth, all this relevant information is over here on the right. I copied that from that picture that I just did the copy of. And now I'm going to use that to make a new document matching the same size. If you want to change the unit measurements to inches, see it's still the 6.9 by 10, still 300 pixel per inch, RGB, 8-bit, white for the background. It didn't bring in the color management, so I'm going to have it switch over to my color management mode there and have it work with that. And then I hit create. So now I have that picture, now I took those pictures, and now I have a new document that's matching the same size and resolution. So simple trick, but it's important to do that. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to transfer the two pictures into this same one blank file here. So the blank file, I'm going to go ahead and name it. So I'm just going to go File to Save As. That works fine. It's going to ask me where do I want to save it and what name I want to give it. I'm going to save it on my desktop. KimberlyJ.psd as a Photoshop file. That way I have it saved there. Could have saved it as a cloud file too. I should have done that, but I ain't gonna worry about it now. Now what I want to do is I want to go to each one of these two other pictures and right click on them, choose duplicate layer. And when I do the duplicate layer, let's see, I want to keep the head of this one. So I'll call this one head. And I want to choose where I want it to go to. So in the destination, I want to choose Kimberly J, which is the name of the blank document I made. I want to choose that as a location of where I want that copy to go to. So that makes that copy and brings it in as a new layer. So now this TIFF file I don't need anymore, so I can close it. And I want to repeat the same process for the other one. Duplicate the layer, This one's the body, and choose to take it over there and hit OK and check to make sure. Now I got the head and the body in the same file. So that's the start of the process, and that's just the start of the process. Now that I got the two files over here into one, now comes the surgery that's going to be involved. It's going to be a lot of back and forth between these two layers. It's going to involve applying a layer mask to both of them, really, to mask away from one and apply to the other. It's also going to involve some transformations because you notice that this picture with the head, this is a closer up shot than the one with the body. So I'm going to have to scale things down as well at the same time. So it's a chore. It's an easy chore to talk about, easy chore to actually do once you start getting in the process of it. I'm not going to go through the full process because that would just take too long, and I don't want to make this video that long for it. But I'm going to show you what I would do to kind of stage through this thing. So first off, the body is the one layer that I'm going to keep the most of. So I want to make this the bottom layer. So I want to have this one underneath the head layer. Okay. So for this body layer here, the only thing I really need to mask is her face and the majority of the hair, at least like at the top section of this. So I'm going to use the lasso tool to kind of do a rough outline of what is going to be masked away. So right underneath the chin, right over the shoulder, and the top part of her hair. That all of that space there, I want to have as a mask. So I want to be able to hide that from the final piece. So at the bottom of the layers panel, there's that button, of course, to looks like a square with a circle cut out. I can click on that, and that will create a mask. Well, it made the body disappear. I wanted the head to go away. That's fine. Don't freak out. What ends up happening in something to always remember when you're applying a layer mask this way, what you have selected is what you're keeping, and what you're going to get rid of is everything that's not selected. Can you fix this now? Do I have to panic and start over? No, you don't have to start over. Quick fix, real easy. I'm going to show you where the command is. Image, adjustments. There's an adjustment called invert. The keyboard shortcut, Controller Command I. What it does is that on the mask, what's white will be black and what's black will be white. Essentially that, just inverts the colors. So I can go image, adjustments, and invert. There's also the keyboard shortcut of Controller Command I that would invert the selection, that basically inverts the mask, and there I go. I think, is it still on here? No, it's not there. I thought it was like you could right click and there would be invert mask as one of the options on the layer mask, but I don't see it. So it's probably not there. And probably something I'm making up in my brain. But that would be the first thing. Second thing would be for the head layer to repeat the same process. Select the part of what you want to keep and then get rid of the rest. So, and mask away the rest that you don't want. So I want the head this time. So again, I could do a rough selection around, under a chin, maybe a little bit lower down the neck, just in case I need it. If not, then I'll, get it out of there. And then around majority of all of the hair. I know I'm probably not going to use all the hair, but just in case I need it there, I can always bring it in, this way. So again, same process. Once I do this, I want to go to the bottom of the layers panel, click on that button to make a layer mask. So now I have everything, the body is masked away, and now I have the head. And this looks kind of crazy and weird. By the way, that Dreams of Self, that project that I'm having you do, is that a lab or a project? I forget. But that Dreams of Self project is doing something like this, where you don't have to do a fine refinement. Get a bunch of pictures, gather them together. As you layer the pictures up, that is your dream self. That's what you're trying to do. Just mask out the different parts that you don't need. And that will be just as cool. If you want to go through the whole thing of layer masking and refining the mask and, do what I'm about to show you here, that works too, because that works. But if you do this kind of cardboard cutout kind of thing like this, that could work just as well. Now, this is what I need to do. I need to take this head and, of course, need to scale it down and rotate it as well because it's not at the right, kind of angle because I don't think her head would bend in that direction if her body is in this direction. So first thing is edit and transform. I would probably end up doing the free transform because that's just easier with the keyboard shortcut to activate. But if you want to do transform and then do scale and rotate, two separate things, that's fine. I'll do scale and then I just want to grab one of the corner handles to scale this. And it's going to scale the entire file. So it's not just the thing that you have masked that's being scaled, it's the whole entire layer that's being scaled up and down. So just be aware of that if you're wondering why that whole box is so huge, it's because you're scaling the entire thing. So I would scale this down, trying to keep reasonable with the size. And I'm also moving it around to try to position. If you notice this little corner that I captured, right under her chin, she's got the outfit. I did that on purpose because I want to try to match it with, the outfit that she still has on because it's the same one. And that kind of helps me with the scale of things too. That if I can get those two to match up, I'll zoom in a little closer so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So right here is basically her head that she's canted over, and this side here, and then this little pattern that's right here. I want to try to match it up to something that would be in that space to try to make it look like it was part of this from the start. And it's never going to be successful. Eventually, I'll be masking that away, but her head's still too big. So, and I used to make fun of her because, saying she had a big old head and stuff like that. It was hilarious. It was funny till it wasn't. Um, Now, if you're having some issues with the scaling, like I'm having right now, one of the other things that you can do is a quick little trick. Let me hit cancel for this. And what I would do is with the top layer, I would turn the opacity of it down so it becomes semi-transparent, probably 50% or something like that, just so you could see the bottom layer a little bit more than normal. Hold on 1 second, folks. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. So what I did is I turned the visibility down, essentially turned the opacity down on this top layer. And what I'm also going to do is when it comes to the layer mask on the body layer, another little fun trick that I discovered because I didn't really know that this existed. But if you look in the properties panel, oh, it's over here. Here we go. Forgot where I put it. If you look over in the properties panel, when you have a layer mask selected, you could change the density of that layer mask. And by changing the density of it, it's almost like you're changing the opacity of the area that's been masked away. So that way you can, if you wanted to, if you needed to, you can have both of the uh, layers where you can kind of see both of them together, depending on how you do with the density there. So that way, if it's like a scaling issue or whatever, you could try to scale and even rotate to make the two match because you can kind of see them both at the same time. So again, just to reiterate, so with the layer mask, you could change the density of the layer mask through the properties panel. By turning it down, you can take, what initially was being masked away and hidden, you can make it semi-transparent or semi, see-through so you could see it, for the moment. And then you can use that along with taking the entire layer and turning the opacity down on the top layer, so that way you can see the two together as kind of a ghost image situation. And then what I can do when it comes to the scaling, I can scale and move. That's a little too much. Now I'm trying to make sure that, from top of the head to the bottom of the head, the two heads kind of match in size. That's my main thing, is trying to use that to match in size. And I'm looking at different things like the alignment of the eyes, the size of the eyes, the forehead to the chin, making sure those kind of match up as best as possible. Once I know that those are matching up, now I can, work on doing things like the placement of the head. And I can work on placement at that point. Now, again, like I said, this is something that takes a longer time than we have, than I want to allot to this, but this is the start of the process. All right. Then the other thing that I also did with this is rotate this. So I turned it off, because this head would not naturally cant this far over. That looks a little more realistic with the head position. And I can play around with it more and more and more as I go along, keep transforming and that sort of thing. Once I get done with that, then the rest of this process is going to be going to both of the layer masks one at a time. And with each layer mask, painting on each one, starting with the one on the top and then going to the one below, and kind of going back and forth with painting between black and white with my paintbrush tool, using the soft round brush. Again, in the brush settings, making sure the spacing is at 10%, and then playing and then using that opacity to my advantage. Not at 100%, but maybe at different varying percentage ranges with the painting, so that way I can paint out different things that I don't need to have anymore in the top layer, and then what I need to restore and bring back in the bottom layer. So, for instance, in the top layer here for head, I don't need this part of her outfit, so I can paint that out. Let me make it bigger so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Um, Turn that off. You see, I got all of this that I can get rid of, and I'm painting with white and not black. Paint with black to kind of get rid of, those different parts that I don't need, in relation to her. I could turn the visibility of the layer on and off, so that way I could see what I actually am keeping and what I'm getting rid of. You can always go back and forth between switching from, one to another, kind of see what you do and do not have. One of the new projects that's going to be coming up in one of the next labs is going through and doing exactly this on something that's arguably a little simpler, but is going to be the same kind of thought process. See, as you start to adjust, you will notice that things like the position of the head, in comparison to the rest of the body, there may be some adjustments you need to do. And the main tricky thing is going to make sure that her neck area and the angle of the head, because I think the angle of the head is still kind of off. That may be all right. But it's just blending these two elements together, right there at the seam where the one of the neck stops and the other one starts, that area, that's going to be a difficult transitional area to deal with. And then making sure, like the hair, there's going to be a combination between the hair of one layer and the hair of the other layer kind of blending in with each other at a particular point. The outfit, the body, making sure those things kind of, those little small aberrations right there where the two pictures are supposed to meet up, make sure those things are removed. If I zoom in closer, you can kind of see where it's not done yet, that it would take me some time to kind of go through and make sure I get correct. And this is a thing that will take time. You want to force yourself into that time to do these things to make that type of correction. So that way you can get this looking as seamless as possible and looks as good as possible. So again, angle of the head, size, position first. You would do after you get like kind of a general gross masking thing going, and then you fine tune the masking. Once you got everything kind of in place, and you keep going back and forth between all those techniques. It's steps to take, but once you take those steps, it can become fun, sort of. But that's what you'll end up getting. So let's go back, if I can, to this file here and see if I go to my original file here in the middle. See, you look right there along the neckline, looks pretty seamless. The only thing I could see as a one criticism now, right around this area is kind of blurry, but that may, you could chalk that up to everything, the makeup and all that sort of thing. But this is what it took. So, you know, angle is a little off, so I got to change what I was doing before. Change the angle just a little bit, raise the head and the neck up, so that way I get everything to kind of flow and blend in with each other. This took some time to do, and by some time, it 2, 3 hours maybe. Going back and forth, like looking at it, working on it, walking away from it because I'm tired of looking at it, coming back to it again, walking away from it again, and coming back to it again. You never want to try to power through a project like this and try to get it all done in one sitting. Sometimes you have to get up and move around, let the blood reflow around and that sort of thing until you get it to the way you like. All right, I'm done with this. This was part three. Part four, we're going to talk about smoothing out skin tones. Doing the generic version versus the high frequency separation. And so I will see you in a few minutes and we'll get in on that.